Story 1. The Shadow Over the Valley. I grew up in a small town in Mexico, a place where people whispered about the supernatural like it was just another part of life. My abuela would tell me stories about brujas, witches, who could shed their skin and fly through the night like birds. I never believed it, not until the night I saw one myself. It happened in 2018, a hot summer evening when the air was thick and still. My cousin Hector and I had been drinking beers on the roof of his house, overlooking the valley below. The town was quiet, except for the occasional barking of dogs. Then, we saw it. A dark shape soared through the sky, moving in slow, deliberate circles above the valley. At first, I thought it was an owl, common in the area. But something was wrong. It was too big. Its wings didn't flap, and its body twisted unnaturally, like it was swimming through the air rather than flying. Hector grabbed my arm. "Es una bruja," he whispered. I laughed nervously, but I couldn't look away. The figure descended lower, revealing a horrible silhouette. Long arms stretched out like bat wings, bony legs dangling, and wild, matted hair whipping around its face. It turned its head toward us. My blood ran cold. Even from a distance, I saw its eyes, gleaming red like burning embers. It let out a long, wailing screech, a sound that made my stomach turn. Then it rushed toward us. We scrambled down the roof, slamming the door shut behind us. Inside, my aunt and uncle were already awake, murmuring prayers. The dogs barked. My aunt said, "That's how you know she's near." All night, we heard scratching on the walls and the howling wind, even though there was no storm. The next morning, we found strange footprints in the dirt, barefoot, human-like, but with clawed toes. I never went on that roof again. Story 2. The Screaming Woman of the Sky. I used to work as a security guard at a rural gas station in Texas, the kind of place where nothing happens, until it does. It was a slow night shift in 2019, around 3 a.m. I was sitting inside the booth, sipping bad coffee, when I heard a loud, piercing scream. It wasn't human. It was high-pitched, almost like a woman wailing in pain, but stretched and distorted. I stepped outside, scanning the empty highway. The sound came again, echoing over the trees. My gut told me to stay inside, but curiosity got the better of me. That's when I saw it. Something was in the air. A figure, black against the moonlit sky, hovering above the gas station. At first, I thought it was a bird, but it was too big, almost the size of a person. Its arms stretched unnaturally wide, and its hair floated wildly around it. Then it turned its face toward me. I'll never forget that face. Pale, almost skeletal, with hollow black eyes and a twisted grin filled with sharp, jagged teeth. The wailing sound came again, and I realized it was coming from her. She dived toward me. I ran inside the booth, locking the door just as she crashed against the window, her claws scraping against the glass. Her mouth moved, forming words in a language I couldn't understand. Then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she flew upward and disappeared into the night. I quit the job the next day. Story 3. The Curse of the Old Woman. I was visiting my grandmother's village in the Philippines in 2020 when I saw something I still can't explain. The locals feared an old woman named Lola Maria. She lived alone in a crumbling hut at the edge of the village, rarely speaking to anyone. People said she was a Mankukulam, a witch. One night, my uncle dared me and my cousins to sneak near her house. We were stupid teenagers, laughing at the idea that she could be dangerous. As we crept closer, we heard rustling in the trees. A strong gust of wind blew, though the air had been still moments before. Then, we saw her. She was floating. Her body hovered above the ground, her long, bony fingers stretched outward. Her white eyes glowed in the darkness. Her mouth opened wide, revealing rows of sharp, yellowed teeth. Then she screamed. The trees shook violently. My cousins bolted, but I stood frozen in place. Her hollow eyes locked onto me, and I felt something pressing against my chest, as if unseen hands were crushing my lungs. With all my strength, I whispered a prayer. Suddenly, the pressure lifted. She let out a shriek and vanished into the shadows. The next morning, we found my uncle sick in bed, his skin covered in strange, black bruises. He never spoke of that night again. I never returned to that village. Story 4. The Witch of the Desert Highway. I work as a long-haul truck driver, covering vast stretches of lonely highways, often driving through desolate landscapes at night. I've seen my fair share of strange things, but nothing compares to what happened on a remote highway in Arizona in 2021. It was past midnight when I found myself on a long, empty road cutting through the desert. The radio crackled, and I had a weird feeling in my gut, like I was being watched. Then I saw her. A woman stood on the side of the road, dressed in tattered black robes, her hair long and unkempt. She didn't wave for help or move. She just stood there, staring at me as I drove past. I glanced in my rearview mirror. She was gone. I should have kept driving, but curiosity got the best of me. I slowed down, scanning the road behind me. That's when I saw something in the sky. A dark figure hovered just above my truck, keeping pace with me. At first, I thought it was a bird, but then I saw its shape, human-like, but grotesquely stretched. Its arms were outstretched, and its face was a pale blur against the dark sky. Then it let out a shrill, piercing laugh. My entire truck shook violently. My headlights flickered. The engine sputtered as if something was draining its power. I floored it. The thing followed me for miles, swooping down and scratching against my windshield with long, clawed fingers. The laughter never stopped. Finally, just as I saw the distant lights of a rest stop, it veered off into the desert and disappeared. I never drove that route at night again. Story 5. The Night Visitor. I grew up in a small Romanian village where people still believe in dark magic. My grandmother always warned me never to leave my windows open at night. She said witches could slip inside, stealing breath from sleeping victims. I thought it was just an old superstition, until one terrifying night in 2022. I was visiting home for the holidays, staying in my childhood bedroom. It was an unusually hot night, so I left my window slightly open. Sometime around 3 a.m., I woke up gasping for air. Something was in my room. A shadow loomed near the ceiling, floating just above me. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I saw its face. A woman with hollow, black eyes and a twisted grin hovered over my bed. Her long fingers reached for my throat, and as soon as they touched me, I felt my body go numb. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. She whispered something in a language I didn't understand. My vision blurred. My chest burned like something was being pulled from me. Then, just as I was about to lose consciousness, I heard my grandmother's voice yelling from the doorway. She threw something at the figure. Salt, I think. And the witch let out a horrible shriek before vanishing into the darkness. The next morning, we found strange claw marks on my window frame. I never slept with the window open again,